The story begins with a galaxy that had always been governed by ancient laws, overseen by the Galactic Council, a gathering of the oldest and most powerful civilizations. They were strict, proud, and unyielding, convinced that their experience gave them the right to judge all who tried to rise among them. Humanity, young and ambitious, had been growing faster than anyone expected. Their ships traveled farther, their technology evolved faster, and their influence spread quietly but steadily across. Neighboring systems dot the Council watched from their towering star palaces, their eyes sharp with suspicion. The humans were clever, resilient, and determined, yet they followed no tradition the Council recognized. Unlike the other species, humans relied on curiosity, creativity, and sheer perseverance. They experimented boldly, sometimes recklessly, but always with a goal to solve problems no one else could. That combination made the Council uneasy. It started with small complaints. Some alien envoys whispered about humans bending rules, exploiting systems without permission, and daring to chart sectors the Council considered off-limits. Most of these whispers were half-truths or misunderstandings. Humans were not trying to break the law. They simply didn't recognize the same boundaries the Council valued. But in the Council's mind, ambition without permission was rebellion. Finally, the Council decided to call humanity to account. In a grand hall suspended in orbit around a dying star, representatives from every major species gathered. Their forms varied. Some were crystalline, others insectoid, some could float and shift shape. In the center stood a delegation of humans, noticeably smaller in number, dressed in practical uniforms that emphasized function over style. They carried no weapons, only data tablets and reports detailing every human expansion. Trade and discovery. The accusations began slowly. "You trespass where you have no right," one crystalline delegate said. "You claim planets without permission." Another, with translucent wings, added, "Your fleets expand like a flood, ignoring trees older than your species itself." The humans listened carefully, nodding at times, but not interrupting. Their leader spoke with calm clarity when given the chance, presenting charts, logs, and communications that showed humanity's respect for borders and treaties. They explained their reasoning for exploring uncharted space, not conquest, but survival and knowledge. But the Council had already made up its mind. Decisions in such meetings were rarely based solely on evidence. Politics, fear, and pride often carried more weight than truth. Humans had become too noticeable, too fast, and that made others uneasy. A vote was called, and despite the humans' careful defense, the result was inevitable. By a narrow margin, the Council declared humanity guilty. The verdict: exile. Humans were not to remain in Council space. Entire fleets, colonies, and cities were ordered to leave, to travel beyond the outer rim, to the unknown void, where life was sparse and survival was a daily challenge. It was a punishment intended to humiliate and weaken, to turn the growing human civilization into scattered survivors. The humans accepted the order, not with submission, but with quiet determination. Their ships were already gathering, engines glowing against the darkness. Families prepared for departure. Workers ensured that every ship had enough fuel, food, and supplies, and engineers worked tirelessly to reinforce hulls and repair older vessels. Even as they left behind homes, research stations, and familiar stars, there was no panic. Only a focused resolve to survive and prove, in time, that they were not to be underestimated. The journey into exile was unlike anything humans had ever faced. They crossed empty space, past dead stars, and unstable systems. Fuel ran low in some sectors, and food became a precious resource. There were storms of radiation that could disable ships in minutes, and meteor fields that tore at hulls like knives. Every step forward required teamwork, ingenuity, and courage. Humans began to rely on one another in ways that only adversity can teach. Leaders emerged not by rank, but by talent, intellect, and the ability to make quick decisions under pressure. Despite the hardships, humans found small victories along the way. Salvaging parts from derelict stations and abandoned ships, they rebuilt engines, shields, and life support systems. They converted asteroids into storage depots, turning raw rock into shelter and fuel. What other species might have seen as impossible, humans saw as a challenge to solve. Every setback became an opportunity to grow stronger. Morale was a constant concern. Long months of travel through the void tested even the most resilient spirits. People missed familiar suns, gentle gravity, and breathable air without filtration. They missed music, laughter, and the comforting routines of home. Leaders made it a priority to keep hope alive. They organized communal meals, storytelling sessions, and even small athletic competitions aboard the largest ships. Humans, it seemed, could make even Exile feel like home if they were determined enough. In this harsh new reality, something remarkable happened. The adversity forced humans to innovate in ways no one in the Council could have imagined. They developed engines that could survive extreme radiation, shields that could deflect not just energy but micrometeor impacts, and sustainable farms that grew in zero gravity. They built medical pods capable of healing wounds and diseases faster than before. Every difficulty birthed a new solution, and every solution reinforced their belief that humans could endure anything. Yet, there was always the shadow of the Council looming in the back of their minds. Humans knew they had been judged unfairly, and while survival was their immediate concern, the idea of returning one day never left them. They recorded their experiences meticulously, documenting the trials, innovations, and lessons of exile. These records were not for revenge, but for history, for the proof that humanity could rise from hardship without losing its soul. As months turned into years, human fleets began to stabilize. They found pockets of resources, small planets with breathable atmospheres, and even isolated intelligent life that had never encountered other civilizations. Humans approached these worlds with respect, trading knowledge, and offering help instead of conquest. Their reputation slowly shifted from reckless newcomers to adaptable, dependable allies or formidable opponents. If threatened. By the end of the first phase of exile, humans had transformed. They were no longer just the species that the Council had dismissed. They were survivors, innovators, and a community bound by the shared experience of loss and challenge. Every ship, every colony, every individual carried the silent promise that this exile was temporary, and that the future would belong to those who refused to be broken. Even as they drifted through the outer rim, navigating the cold and dark of exile, humans began to see a different kind of galaxy, a place full of possibility, untapped resources, and lessons that no Council lecture could ever teach. They were outsiders, yes, but outsiders who were learning to thrive, to adapt, and to grow stronger with every passing day. In this crucible, a new kind of leadership emerged. It was not dictated by tradition or hierarchy, but by capability and vision. Engineers became advisors, strategists became governors, and scientists shaped the direction of entire fleets. Decisions were made through discussion, debate, and careful analysis, not through fear or intimidation. Humans learned to respect skill and intelligence above rank, a philosophy that would later define their entire civilization. The exile had stripped them of comfort, security, and the support of allies. Yet it had given them something even more valuable: resilience, creativity, and unity. Humans were no longer just a species. They were a community tested in fire, bound together by the trials of survival and driven by the quiet promise that one day they would return not as supplicants, but as equals, maybe even as leaders in a galaxy that had once cast them aside. And so, the first chapter of this story ends with humans moving steadily into the unknown, facing darkness and uncertainty with courage and hope. They had lost much, but they had not lost their spirit. In exile, they discovered the truth about themselves, that no decree, no counsel, no judgment could break a people who refused to surrender their will to live, to grow, and to rise. Life in the exile zone was harsher than humanity had imagined. The farther the human fleets traveled from the edge of the council space, the emptier and colder the stars became. They were surrounded by darkness and silence, broken only by the faint hum of their ships and the occasional flicker of distant dying suns. Every day was a test of endurance, both for their technology and for the human spirit. Supplies were limited, and every resource had to be rationed carefully. Food was grown in recycled hydroponic farms aboard the largest vessels, but even these could not fully keep up with the growing population. Water had to be purified and reused, and oxygen carefully balanced. A single failure could mean disaster. Engineers worked tirelessly, running simulations, patching failing systems, and devising new ways to stretch every resource further. Children learned early to value what others might throw away, and adults grew skilled at repairing almost anything with limited tools. The journey through the outer rim was not just physically challenging, it was mentally exhausting. The vast emptiness of space seemed to press in on everyone. Some nights, when lights were dimmed and silence took over, people would sit quietly at their observation windows, staring into the darkness, wondering if they would ever see the stars of their old homes again. There were moments of despair, times when it felt as though the universe itself had turned against them. Yet even in those moments, a quiet determination persisted. Humans were stubborn by nature, and surrender was never an option. One of the most difficult aspects of life in exile was maintaining unity among the fleets. Ships came from different regions of the old human empire, each with its own culture, customs, and priorities. Disagreements over resource distribution, strategy, and leadership were common. Arguments sometimes erupted, fueled by stress and fear. But leaders learned quickly that discipline and communication were vital. Meetings were held frequently, allowing representatives from each ship to voice concerns, offer solutions, and vote on critical decisions. This approach fostered a sense of fairness and shared responsibility, and slowly, a stronger, more cohesive society began to emerge from the chaos. Despite these struggles, humans found ways to innovate. One of the earliest breakthroughs was the development of modular ships that could be repaired, quickly using parts scavenged from other vessels or nearby asteroids. Engineers discovered ways to harness energy from radiation storms and dying stars, providing power for the fleet without consuming precious fuel. Life support systems were redesigned to be nearly self-sufficient, and farming pods evolved to grow multiple types of food in the smallest possible space. Every problem pushed humans to think creatively, to find solutions that no one else had imagined. The harsh conditions also inspired new forms of education and training. Young humans grew up learning skills that were once considered specialized. Children were taught navigation, engineering, and survival strategies, alongside reading, writing, and history. Physical fitness was emphasized because in zero gravity, muscles could atrophy quickly, and maintaining strength could mean the difference between life and death. Storytelling became a vital tradition. Adults recounted tales of resilience and ingenuity, passing down lessons learned from their ancestors, as well as from their current struggles. These stories helped maintain morale and reminded everyone that survival was a shared goal. Humans also encountered unexpected challenges from the natural phenomena of the outer rim, uncharted systems contained, planets with unstable atmospheres, gravitational anomalies, and strange storms that could disable ships in moments. Radiation belts often blocked communication, and rogue asteroids posed constant threats. Every mission required careful planning and constant vigilance. But with each successful navigation, humans gained confidence. They learned to trust their instincts as much as their technology, And in doing so, they became adaptable in ways no council species had ever needed to be. Through these trials, leadership evolved in unique ways. Commanders were chosen not for their heritage or rank, but for their ability to solve problems and inspire those around them. Decisions were often made collectively, with input from scientists, engineers, and even ordinary crew members. Respect was earned through competence and courage, not through intimidation or decree. This new structure fostered creativity and efficiency, allowing humans to respond quickly to challenges that would have overwhelmed more rigid civilizations. Communication among the fleets became a crucial lifeline. Humans developed relay systems that could function despite interference from cosmic storms, black holes, and other space phenomena. This allowed fleets separated by hundreds of light years to coordinate efforts, share discoveries, and warn each other of dangers. Over time, this network became a symbol of human ingenuity and solidarity, proving that even in exile, they could maintain a connected, functioning society. Amidst these practical achievements, the human spirit flourished in quieter ways as well. Communities aboard ships celebrated festivals and milestones. Birthdays, anniversaries, and achievements were marked with small ceremonies, music, and storytelling. Art and literature thrived even in cramped quarters, reminding people of the beauty they were striving to preserve. Though they were far from home, humans created spaces that felt like home, filled with laughter, warmth, and shared purpose. The constant threat of the unknown kept humans alert and resourceful. They learned to anticipate dangers before they arrived, often relying on intuition honed through years of experience. Scouts were trained to detect anomalies, identify hidden resources, and chart paths through the most treacherous regions. These scouts became heroes among the fleet, not for glory, but for saving lives and keeping hope alive. One of the most remarkable aspects of this period was the human ability to adapt ethically to new situations. Unlike other species in exile, humans refused to exploit weaker civilizations or take what did not belong to them. When encountering isolated life forms or primitive civilizations, they offered assistance, shared knowledge, and respected autonomy. This approach earned humans a reputation even in the Outer Rim as a species that combined strength with fairness. Stories of these encounters spread among the fleet, inspiring others to act with courage and integrity. As years passed, humans began to notice changes within themselves and their society. They were no longer just survivors. They were pioneers, explorers, and innovators. Exile had forced them to learn skills and build systems far beyond what they had needed before. Children born during this time grew up knowing nothing of the old galaxy, yet they thrived, learning to navigate the challenges of the Outer Rim naturally. Their resilience became part of the human identity, something no council or decree could erase. The fleet slowly coalesced into a more organized empire, though still very different from what it had been before. Cities and stations began to form on habitable planets. These settlements were designed to be self-sustaining, with farms, schools, medical facilities, and workshops. Communication lines linked these new communities, creating networks of support and trade. Humans had transformed exile into an opportunity, turning scarcity into innovation and danger into strength. Through every trial, humans kept the memory of the old galaxy alive. They recorded everything, knowing that one day their story might be told to others or to themselves. These records were more than logs. They were a testament to endurance, to ingenuity, and to the belief that no power could truly suppress a determined species. Despite the harshness of life, humans found joy in small things. Shared meals, victories in engineering challenges, successful harvests from hydroponic farms, even games played in zero gravity became treasured moments. Laughter, storytelling, and music reminded everyone that while they were exiled, they were still human, creative, compassionate, and unbroken. By the end of this period in exile, Humans had transformed from a species punished by the Council into a society stronger than anyone had imagined. They had learned to survive in the harshest conditions, to innovate under pressure, and to trust in one another. They were no longer just a fleet fleeing injustice. They were a resilient civilization, capable of facing whatever the galaxy could throw at them. And though the stars of the old galaxy were distant, humans had begun to look beyond mere survival. In the quiet moments, they dreamed of return not for vengeance, but to take their rightful place among the stars. Exile had tested them, but it had also prepared them. The challenges of the void had forged unity, resilience, and ingenuity, qualities that would one day allow humans not just to survive, but to thrive and shape the galaxy in ways the Council could never have anticipated. After years of wandering through the outer rim, humanity began to notice signs of hope. What had once been a barren, empty stretch of space slowly revealed hidden potential. Scattered among the dark void were systems untouched by any civilization, worlds with breathable atmospheres, planets rich in minerals, and moons with water ice that could be melted for life support. For the first time since Exile, humans realized they were not just surviving. They could begin to thrive. The discovery of these uncharted systems transformed the human fleets. Scouts and exploration teams were sent ahead to survey each new world carefully. Unlike in the old galaxy, there were no rigid Council rules to follow. Humans approached these planets with a mix of curiosity, caution, and respect. They studied ecosystems, tested soil and water, and examined atmospheric conditions. Every discovery was carefully recorded. Humanity had learned that knowledge was as valuable as any weapon or starship, and they treated it with the care it deserved. With each habitable world they found, humans began to establish colonies. At first, these were simple structures, domed habitats, hydroponic farms, water purifiers, and energy reactors. But they were efficient, built to endure harsh conditions, and self-sufficient enough to rely minimally on supply ships from other colonies. Engineers designed modular homes and facilities. It could be expanded as the population grew. Every new settlement was planned to maximize sustainability. Learning from mistakes made during the early years of Exile, communities quickly adapted to life on these new worlds. Humans worked together, combining skills in engineering, farming, medicine, and science to create functioning societies. Children grew up surrounded by innovation and problem-solving, learning not just how to survive, but how to improve and expand. Education became hands-on, with lessons in survival, navigation, and technology integrated into daily life. These children, born in Exile, were the first to know only a universe without the Council, and they thrived in this freedom. Technology advanced rapidly in this period. The challenges of the Outer Rim had forced humans to invent solutions the Council had never imagined. Energy systems were refined to draw power efficiently from local resources, including geothermal activity and the radiation of distant stars. Ships were redesigned for long-term self-sufficiency, with repair systems capable of fixing themselves without large crews. Communication networks grew more robust, capable of transmitting across vast distances, even through interference from cosmic storms or gravitational anomalies. Humans had learned to rely not only on ingenuity, but on collaboration, and the results were remarkable. Trade between colonies became an important part of human growth. Some planets were rich in minerals, while others had fertile soil or water reserves. Humans established secure trade routes using small, fast freighters and relay stations to maintain communication. These early networks reinforced the sense of unity among human settlements and ensured that no colony would be left vulnerable or isolated. In this way, humans began to resemble a true empire, not through conquest, but through cooperation, planning, and shared goals. At the same time, humans faced moral challenges. Some worlds contained primitive intelligent life, species that had never encountered other civilizations. Humans debated how to approach these life forms. After long discussions, they agreed on a policy of respect and non-interference, offering knowledge and aid only if welcomed. These decisions reflected humanity's growing sense of responsibility. The mistakes of the old galaxy, where rapid expansion sometimes harmed weaker civilizations, had taught humans that strength must be paired with ethics. While technology and infrastructure advanced, the social and cultural aspects of human life flourished as well. Communities established councils where members could voice opinions and participate in decision-making. Art, music, and literature thrived, reflecting both the struggles and triumphs of exile. Storytelling remained central to human culture, and each new discovery or achievement was celebrated through songs, plays, and recorded histories. These traditions reminded humans of where they came from and inspired them to imagine where they could go. Even in this period of growth, humans never forgot the lessons of survival. Training continued to be rigorous. Scouts and explorers were prepared for unknown dangers. Engineers constantly tested equipment under extreme conditions. And medical teams developed techniques to handle injuries and illnesses in environments far from the resources of the old galaxy. Humans learned to adapt quickly to change, understanding that life in the outer rim required constant vigilance and flexibility. One of the most remarkable achievements of this period was the development of specialized exploration fleets. These ships were designed to travel long distances, conduct surveys, and establish early warning systems for potential hazards. Crews were trained in multiple disciplines: engineering, science, medicine, and diplomacy, ensuring that each team could handle any situation they encountered. These fleets became the eyes and ears of the human empire, extending human presence across previously unknown space. Diplomacy, too, became a key skill. Humans encountered alien species along the way, some neutral, some cautious, and a few openly hostile. Unlike in the old galaxy, humans approached these encounters with a combination of courage and careful negotiation. They offered trade, shared technology, and sometimes protection, building relationships based on mutual respect rather than fear. Even small successes in diplomacy strengthened the human position and reinforced the belief that cooperation could be more powerful than domination. Despite these successes, challenges remained. Space was vast and unforgiving, and not every planet proved suitable for long-term settlement. Some worlds had violent weather patterns, toxic atmospheres, or unstable orbits. Supply lines could be disrupted, and disease or accidents could strike at any time. Humans faced these dangers with a mixture of caution, creativity, and determination. Every failure became a lesson, every challenge a chance to improve systems and procedures. In the outer rim, survival was not enough. Humans had to thrive in spite of constant adversity. As colonies expanded and communication networks strengthened, humans began to think strategically about their long-term future. Maps were drawn showing clusters of habitable worlds, trade routes, and resources. Simulations were run to determine which systems could support growing populations, which planets could be used for training and industry, and which locations offered strategic advantages for defense. Humans were building an empire not by force, but through careful planning, innovation, and a commitment to resilience. A sense of identity also began to form. Humans in exile were no longer just remnants of a once powerful species. They were pioneers, explorers, and builders. They took pride in their ability to survive and adapt, in their capacity to create thriving societies from barren worlds, and in the unity that adversity had forged. The hardships of the past became a source of strength, shaping a culture that valued ingenuity, cooperation, and ethical responsibility. Small victories became symbols of hope. A successful harvest on a previously barren planet, a repaired ship that had been drifting for months, or the successful negotiation of trade agreements with alien civilizations, all reminded humans that they were capable of extraordinary accomplishments. These successes were celebrated with festivals, songs, and gatherings that strengthened community bonds and inspired future generations. Even as humans expanded their presence, they remained cautious. They studied the galaxy carefully, mapping gravitational fields, radiation zones, and star systems that could pose risks. Explorers were trained to adapt to unexpected circumstances, to survive in hostile environments, and to return with valuable information. Humans had learned that knowledge was power, and that preparation and foresight were as important as courage or strength. By the end of this phase, humanity had transformed once again. No longer just survivors in exile, they had become a thriving civilization, capable of innovation, cooperation, and ethical leadership. They had built colonies, established trade networks, explored unknown systems, and developed technology far beyond what the Council could have anticipated. The hardships of exile had forged a people who were resilient, resourceful, and united. And in quiet moments, humans looked back toward the old galaxy with a sense of determination. They had grown in exile, learning lessons that no decree or punishment could teach. The challenges they faced had made them stronger, more adaptable, and more capable of shaping their destiny. The galaxy had cast them aside, but humans were ready to rise, not with anger or vengeance, but with skill, intelligence, and the unwavering belief that they could carve out a place for themselves among the stars. In this way, humanity's exile became not just a story of survival, but a story of rebirth. They had taken a punishment meant to weaken them and turned it into an opportunity to grow, innovate, and thrive. And as they looked toward the future, one thought remained constant in every mind. They would not remain in the shadows forever. One day, humanity would return to the galaxy, not as the species that had been exiled, but as one that had mastered the art of survival, exploration, and creation. After decades of building new colonies, refining technology, and mastering survival in the outer rim, humanity finally looked back toward the galaxy they had once called home. From the darkness of exile, the stars of their old territories seemed distant, small, and unreachable at first, but the humans were no longer the species that had fled in fear. They were stronger, smarter, and more united than anyone in the Council could have imagined. The first signs of their return came quietly. Scouts traveled ahead, mapping routes through space that were previously uncharted, noting hazards, gravitational fields, and potential refueling points. These scouts were highly trained teams, capable of surviving alone for months while exploring unknown regions. They brought back not just maps and resources, but also lessons in strategy, coordination, and diplomacy. Humanity had learned to be careful, to think ahead, and to anticipate challenges before they arose. Communication networks, refined over years in exile, allowed distant fleets to operate as one. Human colonies had become tightly connected through advanced relay systems, and every ship in the fleet could coordinate with others in real time. Messages once delayed by months now traveled in hours. Information about enemy movements, environmental dangers, and resource locations was shared immediately. This network turned the human forces into a single, unified entity, capable of acting with precision and speed that the Council had never expected from a species they had exiled. When the first human ships re-entered Council space, their approach caused shock and confusion. Alien patrols noticed ships moving through sectors they had long considered quiet and safe. Reports reached Council leaders that the humans were returning not as desperate fugitives, but as organized, self-sufficient fleets. The Council had expected broken, pleading humans, yet what they saw instead were disciplined ships, armed with technology far beyond anything the Council had thought possible. Humans moved carefully, avoiding unnecessary conflict. They reclaimed some of their old colonies quietly, restoring infrastructure, supplying resources, and reassuring local populations. There was no immediate need for battle. Many of the alien species oppressed by the Council in the past were watching closely, and some even chose to join the humans, seeing them as liberators rather than conquerors. Humanity's approach was deliberate. They would demonstrate strength not through destruction, but through competence, fairness, and protection. At the same time, human strategists studied the Council carefully. They analyzed the political system, the distribution of power, and the weaknesses that had allowed them to be exiled in the first place. Every action was calculated. They prepared fleets capable of defending themselves, while also establishing supply lines and safe zones for trade. Humans understood that returning to the galaxy was not just about reclaiming territory. It was about proving that they were now equals to the oldest and most powerful civilizations. Diplomatic teams were sent ahead to make contact with Council members who were sympathetic or cautious. Humans offered solutions to disputes, trade agreements, and shared technology that could benefit both sides. Many in the Council were wary, but some could not ignore the practical advantages of cooperation. Humans made it clear that they sought neither vengeance nor unnecessary conflict. Their goal was fairness, security, and a place where their species could grow without interference. Despite the careful approach, tension was inevitable. Some factions within the Council feared the human return and prepared for confrontation. Patrols were reinforced, and ships began to move in patterns designed to block human advances. Yet, every time conflict loomed, humans demonstrated restraint. They avoided unnecessary attacks, choosing instead to outmaneuver and outthink their opponents. Their experience in exile had taught them the value of patience, strategy, and preparation. Strength was important, but cleverness, unity, and discipline were equally critical. As humans advanced deeper into Council space, colonies that had been under alien control began to rise up. Citizens and administrators who had grown tired of bureaucracy, corruption, and oppression welcomed the human fleets as allies. Humans provided technology, supplies, and guidance, helping these colonies restore infrastructure and protect themselves. The return was not just military or technological, it was social, moral, and cultural. Humans demonstrated that leadership could be fair, collaborative, and effective, winning loyalty through deeds rather than fear. One of the most critical aspects of the return was the ability to inspire. News of human colonies thriving, of fleets moving in perfect coordination, and of oppressed planets being freed spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species began to see humans differently, not as reckless newcomers, but as a model of resilience, intelligence, and unity. Even those who had doubted humanity before exile now wondered how a species that had been cast aside could come back so strong. Organized and principled, humans also adapted their technology for these new challenges. Ships were equipped with advanced sensors to detect hidden threats, shields that could withstand heavy fire, and engines capable of rapid maneuvers. Colonies were fortified, not for war, but to provide security for populations while maintaining open trade and communication. Engineering teams worked constantly to improve efficiency, often using lessons learned from the harsh conditions of the Outer Rim. Humans had turned experience into advantage, creating systems that were resilient, flexible, and almost impossible to catch off guard. During this period, leadership continued to evolve. Unlike the Council, which relied on tradition, hierarchy, and inherited authority, human leadership emphasized skill, judgment, and accountability. Commanders and administrators were selected based on ability and vision, and even ordinary citizens had a voice in decisions affecting their communities. This approach not only encouraged innovation and problem-solving, but it also created loyalty and unity. People were motivated because they felt valued and respected, not because they were forced to obey. The first direct encounters with the Council were cautious. Patrol ships approached human fleets, weapons ready, expecting resistance. Yet humans demonstrated superior coordination in communication. In one critical engagement, a human fleet navigated a narrow passage blocked by Council ships. Instead of attacking, they used clever maneuvers and electronic signals to negotiate passage, avoiding destruction while asserting control. The Council realized quickly that these humans were not the species they had once underestimated. They were disciplined, intelligent, and capable of outmaneuvering far older civilizations. At the same time, humans strengthened alliances with other species. Those oppressed or marginalized by the Council were eager to collaborate, providing resources, intelligence, and support. Humans respected these partnerships, offering protection, fair trade, and shared technology. The loyalty gained from these alliances became a strategic advantage, extending human influence without force. It was a clear demonstration that leadership built on respect and competence could surpass dominance built on fear and tradition. Throughout this period, humanity never lost sight of the lessons learned in exile. They continued to value preparation, resilience, and innovation. Every colony, fleet, and communication network was designed with redundancy and flexibility in mind. Leaders encouraged adaptability and problem-solving at all levels. Mistakes were examined carefully, not punished, and improvements were applied quickly. This culture of learning, resilience, and collaboration became a defining feature of the human return. By the time humans had fully re-entered Council space, they had not only reclaimed lost territory, but had also established new systems of governance, trade, and security. Colonies were thriving, fleets were coordinated and capable, and diplomatic relationships had been strengthened. The galaxy that had once cast them aside now faced a species that had endured exile, mastered survival, and returned stronger than ever. And yet, even with all these successes, humans remained focused on their long-term goals. They did not seek revenge or unnecessary conflict, but they were prepared for any challenge. Every colony, fleet, and system under their care was designed to protect, sustain, and grow. They had learned that strength alone was not enough. The combination of knowledge, strategy, ethics, and resilience was what made them truly formidable. In quiet moments aboard ships or in the newly thriving colonies, humans reflected on their journey. The hardship of exile had tested every aspect of their species, their courage, ingenuity, compassion, and unity. The return to the galaxy was not just a journey of territory, but a journey of identity. Humans had proven to themselves and to others that they could endure, adapt, and grow under the harshest conditions. They had become a civilization capable of shaping their destiny. As the fleets continued to move forward, reclaiming old colonies and building new ones, the Council could only watch. The humans were no longer the species that had been exiled. They were disciplined, technologically advanced, and morally grounded. Their return was a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the unwavering determination of a species that refused to be broken. By the end of this phase, humanity had achieved more than survival. They had restored their place in the galaxy, established alliances, and demonstrated that they were capable of leadership, innovation, and fairness. The stage was set. Humanity's journey from exile to the Outer Rim had transformed them. They were no longer the species that had been judged and cast out by the Galactic Council. They were disciplined, skilled, and united in ways that no one could ignore. With colonies thriving, fleets coordinated, and alliances forming with other species, humans prepared for what they had once feared, a direct confrontation with the Council. The first step was preparation. Humans studied the old galaxy carefully, analyzing its political structures, military capabilities, and potential weaknesses. Every decision made during their exile had taught them the importance of knowledge, planning, and foresight. Leaders consulted engineers, strategists, scientists, and diplomats. Nothing was left to chance. Ships were upgraded with advanced shielding, faster engines, and improved communication systems. Colonies were fortified, trade routes secured, and supply lines strengthened. Humans knew that the first encounter with the Council could decide the fate of their civilization, and they prepared meticulously. Despite their strength, humans approached the situation with caution. They had no desire for unnecessary conflict. The goal was not to conquer, but to ensure safety, fairness, and justice for themselves and the colonies that had joined them. They sent emissaries ahead, offering dialogue and compromise while signaling their capabilities. Many council members were shocked. They had expected humans to return as broken remnants, desperate and weak. Instead, they faced a species that had survived exile, innovated, and grown stronger, with allies ready to support them. The first confrontations were tense. Council patrols tried to block human fleets, but humans outmaneuvered them with superior tactics and coordination. They avoided destruction where possible, using intelligence and strategy to assert control. This approach frustrated many council commanders who were used to relying on force and intimidation. Humans demonstrated that their strength was not just in weapons, but in unity, strategy, and the ability to adapt. Every victory was measured, precise, and carefully executed to minimize harm. As humans regained lost colonies, they also helped oppressed systems gain freedom. Populations that had lived under strict council control welcomed human support. Humans shared technology, resources, and training, enabling these colonies to defend themselves and rebuild. This approach won loyalty and respect far more effectively than fear or force ever could. Slowly, the influence of the Council began to wane. More and more species looked to humans not as invaders, but as leaders who combined strength with fairness. Diplomacy played a critical role. Humans maintained open communication channels with factions of the Council willing to negotiate. They offered solutions to disputes, proposed reforms, and shared innovations that benefited multiple species. Some Council members resisted, fearing loss of power. Others realized that cooperation with humans could stabilize the galaxy and strengthen trade, security, and exploration. Humanity's approach showed that leadership could be both fair and effective, based on competence rather than fear. Human fleets became symbols of this new era. Ships were not only advanced, but also resilient, capable of operating for long periods without resupply. Crews were trained in multiple skills, from combat to diplomacy to engineering. Colonies were connected through secure communication networks, creating an integrated system that was difficult to disrupt. Humans had transformed exile hardships into strengths, creating a civilization capable of facing even the oldest and most powerful empires. Challenges still arose. Some council factions attempted to resist human influence through intimidation or force. Scattered attacks, sabotage attempts, and political maneuvers tested human resolve. Yet humans met these challenges with careful planning, precision, and restraint. They neutralized threats efficiently, often without unnecessary bloodshed, and ensured the safety of both their colonies and allies. Every success reinforced confidence, both within humanity and among those species that had joined them. Ethics remained central to human actions. Unlike other empires that relied solely on conquest, humans built trust through fairness and integrity. They helped oppressed systems govern themselves, provided protection, and shared knowledge without demanding subjugation. This approach strengthened loyalty and inspired hope. Species that had once feared the Council now willingly aligned with humanity, seeing them as allies rather than conquerors. It was a demonstration that leadership rooted in ethics, intelligence, and cooperation could surpass brute force. Technology continued to advance rapidly. Humans developed new engines for faster travel, shields that could withstand intense attacks, and communication systems that were nearly impossible to intercept. They improved life support, medical care, and agriculture, ensuring that colonies could thrive independently. Innovation was continuous, driven by necessity, curiosity, and the desire to build a civilization capable of long-term stability. Every improvement reinforced humanity's resilience and ability to operate in both known and unknown regions of the galaxy. By the time human fleets fully engaged with Council forces, the outcome was clear. Humans did not rely solely on firepower. They relied on planning, adaptation, and unity. Council commanders were forced to recognize that these humans were not only capable fighters, but also strategic thinkers, organizers, and leaders. They had turned exile into opportunity, and every step of their return demonstrated that a species forged in hardship could surpass those who had underestimated them. Human leadership also set a new standard in governance. Colonies operated through councils, where members had a voice in decision-making. Leadership positions were earned through skill, vision, and accountability. Mistakes were corrected through discussion and analysis rather than punishment. This structure fostered innovation, loyalty, and efficiency. Communities were motivated to grow, defend, and contribute because they felt their efforts mattered. Humanity had created a system that encouraged participation and excellence, uniting people around common goals. One of the most significant moments came when humans brokered reforms within the Council itself. They demonstrated the need for transparency, accountability, and fairness in governance. By presenting evidence of Council corruption and inefficiency, humanity convinced multiple factions to support changes that would benefit the entire galaxy. These reforms reduced oppression, improved trade, and strengthened alliances. Humanity's return was not just about survival or dominance. It was about creating a more just and stable galaxy. Celebrations were held across colonies and fleets. Humans had endured exile, survived the void, reclaimed their place in the galaxy, and reshaped the future. People shared stories of hardship, resilience, and triumph. Music, art, and literature flourished, reflecting the journey from despair to empowerment. Even children born during exile grew up knowing the story of humanity's perseverance, inspiring new generations to dream and innovate. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed with it. They were stronger, wiser, and more capable than anyone had imagined. The lessons of exile resourcefulness, cooperation, and ethical leadership had become the foundation of their civilization. Humans had proven that a species cast aside could rise again, not through blind aggression, but through intelligence, strategy, and compassion. Finally, humanity stood not only as a survivor, but as a leader in the galaxy. They had achieved cosmic dominance, not by crushing others, but by building alliances, innovating, and demonstrating resilience. Former enemies became allies. Oppressed systems became thriving partners. And the Council, once arrogant and dismissive, now recognized humans as equals, leaders, and visionaries. The journey from exile to cosmic dominance had been long and difficult. Humanity had faced starvation, isolation, danger, and political betrayal. They had adapted to harsh environments, learned new technologies, built thriving colonies, and returned to challenge the very system that had cast them out. Through every trial, they had remained human compassionate, curious, resilient, and determined. As humans looked across the stars they had once been forced to leave behind, there was a quiet sense of triumph. They had survived exile, rebuilt their civilization, and reshaped the galaxy. They had proven that no judgment, no decree, no obstacle could break a species that refused to surrender its will, ingenuity, and spirit. The galaxy had been cruel, but humanity had turned cruelty into opportunity. In the end, humanity did not just reclaim their place, they redefined it. They were no longer simply a species among many. They were a civilization capable of leading, protecting, and inspiring. Exile had forged them, struggle had strengthened them, and their vision had united them. The once judged humans had risen, and now the galaxy could not ignore them. Humanity's story had become a beacon for all, a tale of resilience, intelligence, and ethical strength. It was proof that no matter the hardship, a species that adapts, collaborates, and dreams can rise from despair to greatness. Exile had not defeated them. It had made them stronger, wiser, and capable of achieving the impossible. And so, humanity stood among the stars, not as a conquered or dismissed people, but as leaders, innovators, and guardians of a galaxy now shaped by their vision. Their journey from exile to cosmic dominance was complete, and their story became a legacy for generations to come, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.